Let's talk about the physical evidence in the SA case against Katy Perry that was recently brought by Ruby Rose. I'm a forensic scientist and a former CSI. This is an interesting story if you've not heard it yet. This all happened about 5 days ago. Katy Perry was tweeting about Justin Bieber's Coachella performance, and then Ruby Rose posted this. Katy Perry SA'd me at Spice Market nightclub in Melbourne, Australia. Who gives a shit what she thinks? In the days since that post, it seems like Ruby Rose has actually filed a police report in Melbourne, Australia, where this allegedly took place, where there is not a statute of limitations on SA cases, and the Melbourne police are now investigating. They issued a statement saying that they are investigating an alleged SA that happened back in 2010, so 16 years ago. Obviously, Katy Perry and her camp are denying this. I'm not going to read out the specific claims about what happened in the act, but you can read what Ruby Rose wrote. Now, she's deleted those posts since. She says that she deleted them because of this new police investigation. There is some bit of difficulty when we are dealing with a forensic investigation that is delayed 16 years. Now, I don't have an opinion. I don't align myself with either party in this situation, but I'm going to speak generally about SA cases because I have investigated more than my fair share of SA cases in my career. Dealing with a delayed report, even a delayed report of 16 years, is not that uncommon. It is a pretty typical thing in the world of SA investigations that a victim does not come forward until days, weeks, months, or sometimes years after the event occurred. So dealing with something that happened 15 plus years ago really isn't that uncommon for an investigator who is skilled in SA. The problem is that any physical evidence of this obviously is gone. Now, potentially, if it had been reported that night, there could have been evidence because these claims might have resulted in the transfer of DNA evidence from genitals to face and from face to genitals. The difficulty is that understanding that transfer, even back in 2010, would have been problematic. As far as I'm aware, there isn't actually any surveillance video that exists of this event because it's 16 years old and that nightclub no longer exists. They've gone out of business. However, the owner or manager of the club remembers the night that both of them came in, which makes sense because even back in 2010, Katy Perry was a huge celebrity. So if she came into your nightclub, you would probably have a memory of that night. And according to the person who worked at the nightclub, they both arrived together and were in VIP together, and they both left together, which is going to be potentially problematic for this investigation because it runs a little bit contrary to what Ruby Rose is saying, which is that she was basically hiding from Katy Perry, sitting on somebody else's lap when this event took place. The nightclub worker also said that both parties were drinking, that neither party was like fall down drunk, but that night was a security nightmare because Katy kept leaving the VIP area and going out and dancing with the other patrons on the dance floor, which obviously is going to cause an issue when you're trying to protect a celebrity if they are just dancing in the middle of a crowd. So he remembers or she remembers that night very specifically. So what are the police going to do? Well, as far as physical evidence, there's really not much that they can do unless for whatever reason, one party or the other maintained their unwashed clothes from that night for 16 years. In the absence of something like that, there's not going to really be any physical evidence. The other thing that's going to be difficult is getting any sort of video surveillance from the nightclub, from the hotel. All of that is also probably gone because it's been 16 years. And then the other thing that they're going to want to do is obviously eyewitness interviews. And that's also going to be tricky because it's been 16 years. And I imagine that nobody in Katy Perry's camp is going to willingly speak to the police. Ultimately, a case like this with the allegations that were made by Ruby are difficult to investigate and prove, even when they are investigated right at the moment when it happened. But certainly this 16 years of delayed report really doesn't help. Do I anticipate that there will be any charges brought forth? I wouldn't think so if it was an American court. Now, this is Australia, so they do things a little bit differently, so maybe they will bring charges. I don't know. I do expect that there will almost certainly be a civil suit brought against Ruby Rose by Katy Perry's people, but civil litigation is not my circus, not my monkeys, not my problem. Anyway, that's where we're at with the Katy Perry SA investigation. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments.
Good morning, good morning, good morning. Good morning, good morning, good morning. I have a story here for you guys. It's about Katy Perry being accused of SA. Shout out to Long Crime. Let's get into it.
Most content creators and podcasters eventually reach a moment when they need more from their workflow to make the leap from audio to video, to level up their studio production capabilities, or
Australian authorities have reportedly announced they're investigating pop star Katy Perry regarding a sexual assault claim made by actress Ruby Rose. We're getting into the allegations, the potential investigation, the potential charge, what we can expect next, who would be interviewed, and we're going to break it down with someone who is now familiar with how Australian investigations work. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law and Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. Pretty incredible celebrity accusation is now making the headlines. Actress Ruby Rose has accused pop singer Katy Perry of sexual assault at a nightclub in Australia about 20 years ago. This is big news. And what has really made this big news is this has now reportedly prompted an official police investigation over there, which I want to explore with an expert in a little bit about how this might happen. But what started this, right? So Ruby Rose, who is best known for films like Resident Evil, John Wick, Pitch Perfect, The Meg, she took to Threads regarding Katy Perry. And it was regarding Katy Perry reacting to Justin Bieber's Coachella performance. And Ruby Rose goes to Threads and reportedly writes, Katy Perry sexually assaulted me at Spice Market nightclub in Melbourne. Who gives a bleep what she thinks? Now she followed it up with, I'm now 40. It has taken almost 2 decades to say this publicly, though I am so grateful to have made it long enough to find my voice. It just shows how much of an impact trauma and sexual assault takes. Thank you for seeing me. Now, there's a lot more that I'm going to get into here, but there was a representative for Katy Perry fired back in a statement saying the allegations being circulated on social media by Ruby Rose about Katy Perry are not only categorically false, they are dangerous, reckless lies. Miss Rose has a well-documented history of making serious public allegations on social media against various individuals, claims that have repeatedly been denied by those named. Now, I don't believe that was in direct reference to something specific, but to provide a little bit of context here, it was a few years ago when Ruby Rose left the CW's Batwoman show and would make allegations of a hostile work environment and misconduct, targeted producers and executives, which, by the way, Warner Brothers responded at the time saying this was a form of, quote, revisionist history, claimed that she was let go, that she was fired from this project, quote, based on multiple complaints about workplace behavior. But I want to go back to Ruby Rose and Katy Perry. So, in another post, Rose alleged that Perry, quote, saw me resting on my best friend's lap to avoid her and bent down, pulled her underwear to the side and rubbed her disgusting, let's just say, private parts on my face until my eyes snapped open and I projectile vomited on her. Very descriptive. Very specific, okay? Now, Rose also posted that, quote, as a woman, for a myriad of reasons, opening up about W on W, women on women, violence and sexual abuse seems to be 100 times harder than speaking about the male predators, at least for me. And then there was a major update. Rose posted on Threads, today I will be walking into a police station to see if any of my experiences can be investigated. I imagine they are past their statute of limitations, but all the more reason to try. What is interesting is that she had previously posted that she wasn't interested in reporting this to police. Actually, she apparently posted that Perry, quote, is more than welcome to sue me. She won't because it happened. I have photos and it was literally in public and witnessed by multiple people. By the way, legal point of view here, that's right. Katy Perry could technically sue Ruby Rose for something like defamation because of these, I would imagine she would argue, alleged false public statements made on social media. If Rose had filed a lawsuit making these claims, she probably wouldn't be able to be sued for defamation because generally speaking, if you make claims in a lawsuit, you're shielded from defamation suits, right? Makes sense. If anybody could just turn around and file defamation suits against you for filing a lawsuit, it would chill litigation. It would chill anyone from going to the courts, and that wouldn't make sense. But for the public comments that Ruby Rose is making against Katy Perry, yes, is there potential legal liability? I'm not saying Katy Perry is going to file a lawsuit against Ruby Rose, but just something to think about. All right, real quick, this is for you cat owners out there. Who doesn't want their cat to be healthy and happy, right? This is why I got to talk about feeding them Smalls. Most cat food out there, it's made with cheap fillers and meat byproducts and artificial ingredients. Your cat's health is paying the price, but Smalls is different. Why? Their recipes are made with preservative-free, 100% human-grade ingredients that you find right in your fridge. Cats rely on protein for energy. They also need a lot of hydration to stay healthy and toned. And luckily, Smalls contains at least 80% animal protein. Their fresh ingredients are gently cooked to retain all of their nutrients, their hydration, and their flavor. 88% of cat parents report that after feeding them Smalls, their cats have better digestion, shinier coats, more energy to play. The experts have also been raving about it. Forbes ranks Smalls the best overall cat food. BuzzFeed review. Their cats went ballistic for this stuff. Look, your cat's health starts with what they eat. Try Smalls. Get 60% off of your first order plus free shipping and treats for life when you go to smalls.com/sidebar. Now, I want to go to what I believe is Ruby Rose's latest response, posted online. Quote, "Hi. Last update on this. As of this afternoon, I have finalized all of my reports. This means I am no longer able to comment, repost, or talk publicly about any of those cases or the individuals involved. It's going to look like 1 a.m. ignoring everything from supportive messages to other people's experiences, but I'm not. This is a standard request from the police and in many ways quite the relief. I can start the healing process now and temporarily move forward. I love you all so much." And guess what? This is the big update. According to KTLA5, quote, "Melbourne's Sexual Offenses and Child Abuse Investigation Team detectives are investigating a historical sexual assault that occurred in Melbourne in 2010. Police have been told the incident occurred at a licensed premises in Melbourne's CBD. As the investigation remains ongoing, it would be inappropriate to comment further at this stage." Now, CBD stands for the Central Business District, and Perry herself, to be clear, didn't address this claim, but I will say around the same time, on April 14th, she reportedly posted on Instagram, on an Instagram story, writing, "I love you." This was alongside an image of her song By the Grace of God. This is from her 2013 album Prism. Take that for what you will. But I do have to mention this. In an interview with the Herald Sun, this is per reporting by the Rolling Stone Australia, the reported ex-manager of the Melbourne nightclub Spice Market, which has since closed its doors, claimed that the night of the incident that Rose is describing, he doesn't know of anything like that happening. He claimed they came in together. They were also with Katy's hair and makeup girl and another guy who was friends with Ruby. It was a security nightmare because there were 600 people there, and Katy kept coming out and dancing with everybody and going right in the middle of the mosh pit. They were in the Genie bottle, so that's apparently the VIP room, and having drinks and stuff, but were mainly in there doing their own thing. I wasn't aware of any alleged assault or someone vomiting. He claimed that Rose and Perry were both, quote, drunk, but, quote, weren't paralytic or anything. Both had way too much to drink. To avoid people taking photos of them in a state, we organized a car and driver to be waiting outside the Collins Street entrance of the hotel. We escorted them out the back and up the fire exit and put them in the car together. By the way, before we even get into the investigation, what could come from this, I have to say this. This is not the first time that Ruby Rose has gone after Katy Perry. No, back in 2017, she reportedly criticized Perry's Swish Swish song because it was seen at the time as a possible Taylor Swift diss track. And Rose reportedly wrote on Twitter, "I just think with everything going on in the world, to go from rebranding as a political activist only to ditch it and go low is a bummer." One more thing I gotta call out. Certain things have come into focus or have been getting this renewed attention since these allegations from Ruby Rose, like actress Anna Kendrick. So she joked on a 2014 appearance with Conan O'Brien that Perry had
I remember that
cleavage during what she described as a weird night.
Business owners, is your payroll vendor charging you too much? Do they have poor customer reviews? Switch your payroll to Patriot Software and you'll solve multiple problems. You'll get tremendous value at patriotsoftware.com.
Weird Night 2019. Actor Josh Kloss, who apparently appeared in Perry's Teenage Dream music video, accused her not only of verbal abuse, but claimed that she took his private part out at a party without his consent. Georgian Russian television host Tina Kendalaki accused Perry of inappropriately touching and kissing her. 2018, while serving as a judge in a...
Only thing I gotta say is this. When there's smoke, there's fire. Let's continue.
American Idol. Perry reportedly kissed contestant Benjamin Glaze on the lips, which he later said he didn't see it as sexual harassment, but apparently he did say that made him uncomfortable. Now, I want to understand what this Australian investigation could look like. Is there no statute of limitations? Could Katy Perry be interviewed? Could she be arrested? Who else would be interviewed?
Yeah.
in connection with this case? That's what I want to break down.
Could you be
so now I want to
arrested?
bring in Mike King. Why do I want to bring in Mike King? Well, aside from the fact that he's a fantastic guest and a retired police commander and host of Profiling Evil and author of Wolves in Sheep's Clothing, he actually has a very specific expertise when it comes to Australia investigations. What do I mean? So he has this 4-part documentary in Australia that I believe is dropping April 22nd. It's a serial killer case. The series is big news over there right now. So, Mike, thanks for coming on. To give everybody some perspective, you're familiar a little bit with how investigations happen in Australia, right?
Yes, Jesse. In fact, I had the opportunity for probably 7 years to work in throughout the entire country of Australia in each of the individual states. Came to know, at least at the leadership level, many of the commanders from each of those different people, including I've sat in the offices in the Vic Police Department. So this is really kind of an interesting case to me from a number of perspectives. Not only the kind of differences between U.S. law and Australian law to the level I understand it, but the way in which they investigate things.
Can you talk about that as before we get into more specifics, generally speaking, how is it different? How is an Australian investigation different than an investigation here in the States?
Well, I always look at Australian police a little differently anyway, because they are so much better, in my opinion, at handling conflict resolution and other things, because they have to learn how to chat with people and really try to control them in less lethal means. Now, this case has nothing to do with less lethal,
Sure,
other than it's an entirely different mindset. The laws, I think, are similar in nature, other than they fall under the Queen's rules in many cases, and so it's a little different. It's hard to understand for me at times, but when you get down to the core legal aspects, especially in a case like this, sexual assault, regardless of whether you're in Australia or in the United States or anywhere else, is still sexual assault. And
Right.
they have statutes, they might name them differently than what we would look at this case and potentially try to categorize it as.
All right, so with that kind of background, it feels like a big deal for the Victoria Police Department to make this statement. I'm going to read it one more time. Melbourne Sexual Offences and Child Abuse Investigation Team detectives are investigating a historical sexual assault that occurred in Melbourne in 2010. Police have been told the incident occurred at a licensed premises in Melbourne CBD. As the investigation remains ongoing, it would be inappropriate to comment further at this stage. Now, they don't mention specifically Ruby Rose. They don't mention specifically Katy Perry, but everybody's putting 2 and 2 together. The fact that they are announcing an investigation here and kind of have a unit that is dedicated to historical claims of sexual assault. Are you familiar with this unit? Or generally speaking, the fact that they have announced this feels like a big deal.
Yeah, and to me, actually, Jesse, when I look at it, the Aussies are pros at getting in front of the media and then shutting everything down. They don't share information. They don't say this is where we are. It's a lot different than it is here, although they're very quick to get out in front, acknowledge, even accept some facts in cases, but not share what's happening in the ongoing investigation. Yeah, I mean, even you mentioned this documentary that's coming and some discoveries that we made in cold cases. They took the information, but then the wall comes up and there's no sharing of information. It's also kind of interesting because just the way that the Australians speak is so foreign to many of us in the United States, even though we certainly understand what they're saying, but the words that they may use. And so when they're saying a historical case, for us, we might be thinking, well, this is breaking history. In reality, what they're saying is, hey, this is a cold or an old case that we're bringing back from history and looking at, and we have an obligation, whether it's because of the notoriety of the people involved or just the fact that they really are pretty forward-thinking when it comes to sexual assault. They're investigating the crime, or the allegation, I should say.
And by the way, I mean, you heard this a little bit from Ruby Rose, but I did as best of research as I could on this, and I'm not an Australian lawyer. It doesn't appear that there is a statute of limitations issue, that it could be time barred, that even if this happened in 2010, there is potential criminal liability here for Katy Perry, right? I mean, unless I'm looking at it the wrong way.
No, I would have to agree with you on that. And I don't understand their criminal code very well. but if I remember right, back in about 2007 or 2009, they made some adjustments to the criminal statutes that allowed reporting, no statute of limitations or no end of the road when it comes to something that goes on. Now, whether that carries a lot of weight in moving forward is going to be interesting, because while they may say, yeah, we'll certainly open the case, we'll look at it, and we'll respond, that doesn't mean they're going to be able to recover evidence that far back or even rely on witness testimony that far back.
Yeah.
But it opens the door. And I wonder if it just doesn't also make it a clear pathway for somebody if they chose to go civilly in this particular case rather than criminally.
Talk to me about what this investigation looks like, because you hear Ruby Rose, just taking her word as true for a moment, these are her allegations. She claims she went to the police and told her account. What is that interview like, and where do they go from there?
Well, I think as an investigator, you have to take into account, number one, delayed disclosures after sexual trauma is common. And we shouldn't just say because it happened 15 or 20 years ago. And there's vacillating reports on when this thing really happened. We are now starting to narrow in on testimony from, for instance, that Spice Club of when that event happened, but is that actually the same episode?
Yeah.
We don't know for
When
sure.
did it happen
You have
and
to
how it
consider that
happened?
delayed disclosure is going to be common. I think the second thing we have to think about is that these things take time for people to expose, especially if it's a same-sex sexual encounter. Sometimes that's a little harder for people to talk about than others. But clearly, you have to think, okay, why did it come up now? And you have to consider the fact, what was that interpersonal trigger, that event that happened that caused Ruby Rose to say, I'm ready now to do it? Whether it was just an immediate knee-jerk, hey, I'm going to socialize that she assaulted me, or not, we don't know. I mean, previous accounts say that she talks about it as a funny drunk story, but now it's a serious sexual assault against her. And you have to think, or is it possible that this is just really a less charitable approach? She's just flat doing some score settling or something. So for an investigator, as you're putting together and trying to figure out what evidence you have to kind of keep those things in mind too. And none of them mean that this is a truthful story or that it's a false story. It just means that you got to make sure you're considering it all.
I believe that this Spice Market, this nightclub, I think it closed. I went on their Instagram, and I think their final night was January 1st, 2026, which makes me wonder, how do they get all, do they go back and get all the footage from 2010? Is it still available? Back. Different age, different time? Feels like yesterday, but also a different time. How do they go about doing this?
You know, there's an old retired Victorian police commander that was on the Australian news talking about this then, and I have to agree. Number one, they're not going to recover any CCTV coverage or video footage from the venue itself unless somebody, because of the notoriety of who was there, personally held on to that. I just don't think there's going to be an official record anywhere. But in this day and age where people are filming at every turn with their mobile devices, there could be several pieces of corroborating video that support this story that the Vic police are going to be looking at and taking into account.
How do they even get that? How do they? I mean, it's a nightclub. How do you even get witnesses, people who were there?
Well, I would say that it begins with the fact that it's Katy Perry and Ruby Rose, and that everybody is going to say, oh man, I remember collecting or watching that or catching a video, and they may choose to weigh in. It could also be that the alleged victim in this case reaches out to people that she's talked to over the last 20 years that say, I remember that, and they're willing to step forward and say, yeah, I talked. So finding a witness even from 20 years ago may not be that difficult, especially given the notoriety of the individuals involved.
What about the former manager's account? What do you make of that? Basically, again, said that they appeared to be intoxicated, he never saw anything, or never was told anything or reported anything that would suggest what happened or would support Ruby Rose's claims. Doesn't mean it didn't happen, but he's the former manager.
I would have to say that he is more reliable than many others because they don't have skin in the game from one side or the other of this discussion. And I really think
about it. If somebody was allegedly sexually assaulted in some way in the club that he managed, I don't know. That could be something to be thinking about.
RAF is exclusively on Fox Nation. The world's best wrestlers all on one mat. These heavy hitters set to
I don't know. That could be something to be thinking about.
I think you make a really good argument, but that from a risk perspective, he might be saying, hey, everything was just a bunch of drunks and nothing happened to reduce risk against the company. I don't know that it could hit him personally, and if your research is accurate and the company is out of business, I guess I see that less likely than the fact that this is probably just an independent witness who sees drunk behavior every single night and would have probably remembered, again, based on the notoriety, whether it happened or not. I think you make a really good argument that I can't.
He doesn't have to speak to the press about it, and apparently this reported ex-manager did. So that's a point in your corner. I mean, and the idea he doesn't have skin in the game. Why even say anything? He could say, I had no comment, I don't remember it, or say anything, but he was pretty specific.
Yeah, and again, I think the dynamic is so different because of the notoriety of people. Some people might be willing to take that risk because they think it gives them that moment of fame in the public spotlight too.
Let me ask you this. I talked about at the beginning some historical context with respect to Ruby Rose and Katy Perry. So Katy Perry's rep had called out Ruby Rose for allegedly making false statements, and I mentioned the back and forth that Ruby Rose had with Warner Brothers at one point. I talked about earlier how there were these other claims from other people like Anna Kendrick and others regarding Katy Perry. How much do investigators look at that and say, well, we're taking this allegation from Ruby Rose, let's look at other allegations that she's made. Okay, we're looking at this allegation against Katy Perry, let's speak to other people who've made allegations against her. Do they speak to Anna Kendrick? It's not even related to Australia. She made this comment on a 2014 appearance on Conan O'Brien. How much do they look at all that?
In my case, I would absolutely be looking at those kinds of things. You know, I went back and just did some research on Katy Perry, for instance. First big hit, I Kissed a Girl. Well, does that mean anything? Probably not, but in this context, could it be interesting? Yeah, when you see allegations that are coming out of maybe some pretty outrageous behavior in a bunch of different places, you have to take that into account. I remember going through the early stages of learning this art and science of profiling. A former profiler sat down with me and he said, just keep in mind this simple thing. Past behavior is predictive of future behavior. And so you have to take into account the repetitive kinds of behavior that is getting a little close to the sun in many cases. To answer your question, I would absolutely want to interview every one of those and ask, tell me exactly what you remember.
What about interviewing Katy Perry? How would that work? You know, do they ask her to come to Australia? Do they do an interview over Zoom? I mean, how does that work exactly?
Well, number one, I don't think she will agree to talk if they even do ask her. But we might find on the flip side of that she's compelled to go and defend her name, and she may hop on a plane and go over and say, I want to talk to you right now, and walk in with her lawyer and sit down and do that. I don't think this is the kind of case that you could justify saying, we want you to come to Australia and spend 14 hours on a plane to come over and do an interview on this case. They do it in a Zoom or something like we're doing it.
Would they ever come to the United States?
Very possible, especially if, in fact, they continue to get a bunch of pressure from the community or from the citizens and media and others, and they have people here that need to be interviewed. They may say, hey, this is worth putting one of our detectives on a plane and flying them over and letting them go and talk to people face to face.
I want to be very clear. These are just allegations at this point. Just allegations that Katy Perry is facing. We don't know what supporting evidence or corroborating evidence may exist or not exist. But I have to, as we're talking about this, so we're talking about this investigation seemingly being launched, from what you know about Australian criminal procedure, how does an arrest and how does charging work over there?
It's very much like ours. I mean, they would in this kind of a case, I would think, just put out a document and let the lawyer know and say you can come and surrender and be booked. I don't know if they would allow her to be digitally booked and then have to come over for the actual criminal proceedings or not. But I think it's going to be handled much like it would be handled here. But we have to keep in mind, I mean, here, we probably would put someone on a plane and extradite her back if she didn't come on her own.
Right, that's a good point. All right, Mike King, let's see where this goes next. Thank you so much for taking the time, sir.
Thanks, Jesse. Great to see you.
See y'all later.
Right now here on Sidebar, everybody, thank you so much for joining us. And as always, please subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you should get your podcast.
So is a 20-year-old allegation about to become a major legal battle? We got to talk about what's happened between Ruby Rose and Katy Perry. So it all started on Threads during Coachella. Ruby Rose posted some very graphic and very serious allegations against Katy Perry, claiming that she was sexually assaulted at a Melbourne nightclub nearly 2 decades ago. Now, CNN has reached out to Ruby Rose multiple times. We have not gotten a response. Now, here is where this moves from post to police. After initially saying that she was not interested in filing a police report, Ruby Rose posted that she decided to file one. And Victoria Police confirmed to CNN in a statement that officials from the Melbourne Sexual Offences and Child Abuse Investigation Team, they are now investigating. And they declined to give any additional information or comment because it's now an ongoing investigation. Now, Ruby Rose has since deleted that post and states she can no longer speak publicly about the matter. On the flip side, Katy Perry's team, well, they are not staying quiet. Her representatives, they released a statement and they called those claims, those allegations, categorically false and, quote, dangerous, reckless lies. Now, who has jurisdiction? Australia, where it allegedly happened. And even though it's been nearly 20 years, there's actually no statute of limitations on reporting sexual assault in that jurisdiction. So whether this ends up leading to criminal charges or a civil defamation suit or vindication or anything else, it's all a massive reminder that social media posts have real-world legal consequences.